I'm an American serviceman and joined the war after Germany began unrestricted submarine warfare against our ships. I served on the fields of Flanders in France and fought in the trenches at the Battle of the Argonne Forest and saw firsthand what artillery and machine guns and poison gas can do to a human being. Our war came to an end on the 11th day, at the 11th hour, at the 11th month in 1918. We call it Armistice Day. However, today, you know this day as Veterans Day. We fought to make the world a safer place where allies would be a thing of the past, and we called it the war to end all wars, but it was not meant to be. I was there when the Japanese attacked our Pacific Fleet, stationed at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, on December 7, 1941, which brought the United States into World War II. I served on the seas and the islands in the Pacific, in the deserts of North Africa, in the mountains of Italy, in the skies over Europe and Japan, and the beaches of Normandy. We all have our stories, but Captain Henry T. Wasco, who our school is named after, was the captain in the U.S. Army, Company B, 1st Battalion, 143rd Infantry Regiment. He had the utmost respect for the soldiers who followed him into battle. He led them into Italy to fight against the Nazi forces that still occupied the country, even though Italy had surrendered. After a week of fighting during the Battle of San Pietro, his company of over 100 men had been reduced to platoon size, numbering around 35 men. On the night of December 12, 1944, shrapnel from German artillery hit him in the chest and killed him. His words, though in his last letter home, summed up the feeling that real leaders feel. Here are Captain Wasco's words. God alone knows how I worked and slaved to make myself a worthy leader of magnificent men. I feel sure that my work has paid dividends in personal satisfaction. If nothing else, I felt so unworthy at time of the great trust my country had put in me. I simply had to keep struggling to satisfy my own self that I was worthy of that trust. I have not, at the time of this writing, done what I suppose I never will. We defeated Hitler and the evils that had been introduced to this world, and the war ended months later in Tokyo Harbor on the deck of the USS Missouri when Japan signed the unconditional surrender terms. We had fought to destroy dictators and true evil. We overcame it with a spirit of determination that dwelled in all Americans. I came to the rescue of the small country of South Korea after it was invaded by the North and supported by the communist socialist countries who did not like our freedom and our way of life of free people. I fought in places like Busan and pushed the communist forces all the way back to the Chinese border. I then froze and fought to keep millions of Chinese from driving me and my buddies in arms off the peninsula. There was no clear winner, but we showed the world and the communist governments of the world that we would stand beside people who desire to have freedom and democracy. I served in the jungles of Vietnam, one of the longest wars this country has ever seen. I went and did my duty, but felt betrayed by the politicians and protesters back home who did not understand. We won every battle, but never held any territory. We fought in a country where you could not tell your enemy from your ally. When the U.S. finally began to pull out of Vietnam, we came home not to parades, but to demonstrations and people calling us names. Our entire country seemed like it was falling apart. In the end, I fought for the same thing all soldiers fight for, their buddies who were fighting next to them. I was called into service once again in 1990 when another dictator thought that no one would care when he invaded his neighbor to the south. It was known as Operation Desert Shield, and no one knew at the time how long the war would be. People were able to watch the war live in their living rooms when we began the air campaign. Shortly thereafter, all the questions about our military's ability to fight disappeared. We drove the forces of Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait and destroy large parts of his army from the ground and the air. This war also had another effect. Not only did it defeat the forces of Iraq, but it helped bring down the Soviet Union, our major enemy in the Cold War. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, people around the world experienced freedom and democracy for the first time. I served after men without a country, but were driven by hatred of Americans and our freedom and what we have always stood for. These terrorists hijacked and flew passenger jets into the World Trade Center buildings in New York City and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. Sacrificed by Americans on board the fourth plane, made the decision to storm the cockpit and crash the plane into a field instead of their goal of the Capitol building or White House. I fight once again to make the world safe from fear and to destroy those possessed by evil who want to destroy us and those who stand with us. I have served many tours in Iraq and Afghanistan in an effort to give these countries their freedom. In this room, we have veterans who have served or are currently serving our great nation, or students who have a mother, father, or sibling serving. We all have brothers, fathers, mothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, or grandparents even, who have served their country. We like to take this time to say thank you for your service and the sacrifices you have made on our behalf. I know you remain on guard, as will those who will serve after you. As Abraham Lincoln once said, to ensure that this nation, conceived in liberty, shall not perish from the earth.